All
Should we
right,
talk about the other side of the bracket then?
Yeah, I think we have to get into the other games because obviously people are going to be very excited to talk about the 2 5-game bangers that we saw. Even though DRX versus EDG is kind of a fraudulent banger, because I think if either of those teams played against basically anyone else in the bracket, they probably get rocked. But because they played against
each other... I'm just going to say, Monte, the reason why the DRX one doesn't get to be a banger is because DRX won 4-1 in a BO5. What do you want?
Look,
we will talk about that.
We'll talk about that. I say DRX lost that game like 3 times before that inhibitor. You know, they basically. We'll get. Well, okay, let's just do that one first. Then we'll save the actual gold match of Genji versus Damwon Kia for last. But if we talk about the EDG versus DRX games, I think there are a lot of, obviously people will remember it because of the hype of like that inhibitor respawning, and like I just thought that we thought the game was over, and then like you're just like, holy shit, like the inhib respawned with like 1 auto left. But factually, guys, DRX threw that game like multiple times and like actually deserved to lose that game. Zeka got picked off when they had their first Baron. Deft got picked off when they had their second Baron, and then Deft also got picked off another time. And like they were just playing the actual macro around their advantages quite badly in that game, and really truly deserved to lose that. They could have closed that game much earlier for the epic Deft Ezreal teleport in, like shoot down the Nexus moment, and
Deft was called,
really fail it.
Deft was called like below wolves.
Yes.
Which is like most, that's the most like, where are you trying to really force an advantage here? Is you're Ezreal, you're pretty safe, right? You have Arcane Shift, you can get out of a lot of scenarios, but he was in an area where he wasn't really gaining advantage. He was picked there, trying to chase and trying to force an advantage on the bot lane, I guess at that point in time. But as Monte mentioned, the trying to kill the Nexus with a sick teleport play, which was denied by an inhibitor respawn, which we can all forgive. Like, no one's going to be like, Deft should have known that like the inhibitor was going to respawn at this time. We could forgive all that. But that was basically Deft cheating a win, which would have been amazing if he actually pulled it off, because it would have been super smart. He comes in, he gets the win. He basically snipes backdoors as an AD carry who has teleport, which is very rare and almost never happens.
Well, also people forget that JJ from the Baron pit canceled DRX's second TP with Sejuani, so it was almost just a 2v1. Like that could have ended the game if just one more player from DRX was there.
But it was basically like at that point, Deft almost stole the game away.
Yes.
And I think that's the way people will never look at this, is that Deft almost like basically cheated this one away with a really smart play where he backdoors and kills the Nexus. But because of all those picks that happened where he was picked off, and the poor team fighting that DRX had in the Baron fight prior to this, they didn't deserve the win, but oh no, the inhibitor died. It was really they almost stole the win, I think, is how I like to look at that one. As much as I love Deft, and DRX won in the end, so who cares?
There's also a detailed wolf, which is actually mental if you know the old school law, which Monte will know, which is Deft also famously fucked up a quarterfinal with a teleport on a fucking ADC in like 2015 or whatever it was, when they were in that one against Fnatic, and that was like an infamous game that made the whole narrative like Deft the choker. Yeah, exactly, with the Jace one. So it would have also been so poetic justice to win that game on that and be like, I actually made the look. It took me like. By the way, if people don't get it, I know some players play up to the cameras, but when they asked Deft, like, what do you think about being back in the semi-finals like 8 years later, the reason he was like breaking down is because like, I think I only hit him then, like, what the fuck? That's how long it's been. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, I've been in like the Hyperbolic time chamber my whole life. I know exactly. Like, what the fuck?
It was like 2,900 days, almost 3,000 days. And like, yeah, I mean, it was a great interview. And like, it was a really wonderful moment. And I'm glad I think it was great of Shox to ask that particular question first. But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show like Deft has had a pretty, wonderful domestic career, whether it's been in Korea or China, but he has struggled at international events. He is on a very short list of players who are like kind of tragic that they've never won Worlds, right? Like, I don't know if you could make an argument that he is the best player to have never won Worlds.
I mean the joke, he's maybe going to play the next guy, Chovy. It's the two of them, right?
Yeah.
We got top 8 in every Worlds he's appeared in, right? And obviously this is his second top 4. So he's always been able to consistently perform in Worlds. He's been in more Worlds than most players. So, I mean, you consider that in itself as an accomplishment. But you're never happy with that. You want to lift a trophy. You know, you want to get to that finals. You want to actually be a world champion before you retire. And it gets harder and harder as you get older. And that's, I know we don't like Deft is not old, so don't get us wrong. But in terms of pro gamer years, he is quite old. Like he's quite experienced. You know, and he doesn't have that same sort of I'm rising to fame. I'm rising. I'm a new star. Like I'm building up. I'm getting famous kind of thing. He's already famous. He's already achieved almost everything there is to achieve. He's just got this one last thing to grab, and I don't think any of us are going to predict that that's going to happen, considering the opponents left for him. But it would be so cool and so insane if it happens. And everyone has said, no, he's not going to do it. It's not going to happen. He's not going to Worlds. Too bad he's sixth place in the LCK. And he just keeps saying, nope, I'm going one step further. I'm going one step further. I'm going one step further. And yeah, he didn't get the Nexus kill there, but he got the Game 5 win. And who knows how deep he could go. If he pulls off the upset against Gen G, who's to say he can't beat T1 or JDG?
He won't be denied, Wolf. Even God tried to stop him winning that series. It still couldn't happen. That's all you need to know. Deft skills better than God. That's fucking, what do you want?
What were your impressions
Also,
of that
you know, when
series,
people do
Dorado?
say that, you know, the Korean players always say that classic line in interviews, like, cheer for me and I will show good games. They're not trolling when they say that. They actually do all believe when they lose, they could have played better and practiced harder and won the game, no matter who they are. So the joke is, like, Deft really was like, all right, I did it, guys. And then, like, the joke is all the fans who were waiting since 2014 are like, they're off doing some, like, overtime, working in the fucking, like, working at the Kmart or whatever. Like, he actually did just grind for 8 years, guys. He's back. He's back finally.
This series was fucking wild because I felt like the majority of the progression within all of the games for any team to move forward was due to unforced errors. Like that game, the only reason like the game where the fucking Ezreal was hitting the Nexus, the only reason they got 2 inhibs on their Nash push when they shouldn't have was because Scout just got solo killed by Akali. And Scout was playing the Azir, and in all honesty, they shouldn't be able to break the base with that Nasher. They had 2 minutes left, and then they just happened to break 2 inhibitors in a situation where it should have been very difficult. And that to me was the story of that entire series. There were so many unforced errors that put both teams in positions where the compositions really didn't get tested in a way that they should around the Drake fights or around.
I mean, Barrow was straight hinting on Heimerdinger from
Barrow was
game,
fucking jogging around. I don't know what the fuck he was. He was in the Matrix, like canceling bases or something. I don't know where he was. He was on a different plane sometimes, and there was so many errors that were so strange, and they happened due to I don't know what there was lack of focus or something. And I think, for me, the biggest disappointment, because I thought like, I put Scout on my top list, you know, like in my top 3 coming into the World Championship as a player. EDG wasn't looking super strong because they got smashed by Top Esports and JDG originally, but I had high hopes for them. And looking at Scout, like even in the initial game, the first game, he's laning against Oriana's Azir. They didn't put the camera on it, but he was getting smashed.
Yeah, he was getting wrecked. We were really surprised while watching it.
I don't know what the hell was going on. And this was, and then the Victor game, that should have been his game to carry, but then he got caught on mid in the Renato, had flash, decided to stopwatch instead of flashing out of it. Soraka E'd under him, he died, burnt his flash afterwards on a siege in mid due to Ezreal poke, and these are things that just can't happen. He could have carried that one game, and then later the easiest game to point to was of course the complete collapse in the Akali game against Silas. He plays it super well, burns the flash, flashes in, and then he misses 15 energy for the Q. You know, shit happens. But then it was just a continuation of like a spiraling down, because I did feel like in some of those games EDG had the better draft, and sometimes I felt DRX had the better draft, but it just wasn't relevant because so many unforced errors progressed the game for the team that managed to catch that error in and put it in their pocket and run away with it. There were Nashes that were taken, and there were Drake steals that were occurring from Pioshik left and right, and it wasn't like a methodical game. It was just a game of who would do the least amount of errors and who would stand tall in the face of that
Final moments? The final moments where it looked like DRX might throw.
Dude, was your butthole clenching, Yamato, when you saw Pioshik try that steal 4v5 when it was just completely unnecessary, and like they could have just like waited for like they didn't have to take that Drake. They were in a very powerful position in that game. I was like, really? You guys are gonna chance losing this for a flip steal onto Dragon for Soul when they will not get Soul off of this Dragon, when you could just wait with your significant like golden experience lead. That was insanity to me.
We were all panicking.
It was crazy. I remember there was that one game, the fourth game, I believe, when the enemy team is doing Drake, and then DRX is calling, let's just all flash into the pit. And they all just flashed into the pit, and they just got murdered there. And I was like, what the fuck was that? They just, 3 people, like 2 people decided not to. So it was Kalista, Kabil, and Sejuani just flashed in the pit and started hitting the Drake, and they were just in a meat grinder. They couldn't cross this place. They didn't have flash. I don't know what the fuck that was.
So, I remember that moment you were talking about, because it was also just pointless to try and like win.
Yeah.
Like you could just lose the game there if you fucked that up. And like, what was the point of doing that? Like, it wasn't some kind of fucking emergency where that one Drake was worth that much. They could have just given it up. I mean, the series even started weird, because if you looked at the first game's drafts, DRX has such a fucking insane draft advantage, and we were sitting there and we're like, okay, so how does EDG actually win? Like, they're not gonna really be able, like, first off, DRX started to get the priority on the dragons. As long as DRX is there and setting up Heimer turrets, they have all of these kiting abilities, like volley from Ashe. You have the turrets. You have, you have smoke screen from Graves. You have the Orianna ball creating zones. You're not going to get a flank, right, with Flandre on Kennen. So, like, the one win condition is that Scout gets a fucking good ult. And lo and behold, they fuck up their control. Like, DRX fucks up their control over the dragon. Scout just comes in, sweeps like 3 of them into the Kennen ult. And I was like, that was the only way they could possibly win. That was the only way. We were so fucking mad because it was just so stupid.
That game was silly as well, because I think that shows like the class difference. Like they had a game of playing Graves, but they missed very important timings. They didn't pressure the Drake before the 6-minute mark, which meant that their Drake take always coincided with the Rift Herald spawning, which is a very, very big difference maker when you are drafting yourself into Graves, Ashe, Heimerdinger. There was one particular point where they dove bot, Lee Sin stayed in Fog, he took his blue, he took his Gromp, and Graves decided not to stay to take the respawn of the camps of Lee Sin. And all of those things put Lee Sin in a position where he kept up even in a scenario where he should, in theory, be invaded on bottom side consistently. Yeah. And this was something that the big class difference between the sides of the brackets of the best of fights that we saw. Like if you looked at how Kanavi played the Graves, or I guess Kanavi is the best example. I don't need to like the example in terms of how everyone plays around those timings and how they keep squeezing and never let go of that, having that foot on your throat when you're playing jungle. That just didn't happen. Lee Sin kept even, and they managed to always. Oh, the enemy is doing Drake, or it spawns right when Rift Herald spawns, and this was like a big problem for DRX in terms of how well the enemy team kept up in the game, and that's just the class difference that we are going to see as the tournament progresses, and hopefully, I don't know if that's going to be tested against Genji specifically, but if DRX played against a JDG, for example, that could be, a dangerous thing, but I don't think that's going to happen, so I don't even know why I bring it up.
I just can't believe we live in a world where post-Chovy, Pioshik is in a motherfucking world semi-final. What? Who had that on their fucking bingo card at the beginning of the year? What the fuck is that? It's not even like he's that good either. Like, I don't know. It doesn't even make any sense why DRX is in the world semi. No, nothing does. Like Wolf said, they weren't supposed to be even close to qualifying. Then when they made it, people, remember, I got them as like an underdog in that first game in the play-ins against RNG. Like, people thought they'll come out second there. Like, nothing like this. There's no way they were supposed to win their group. There's no way they were supposed to be, even, and on paper, EDG is supposed to win this quarters. Like, the whole run's just a miracle run.
Could have been Croco.
Please don't.
Could have been
Does crocodiles like that? I don't think so, man.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.